Hello guys, Flanker here. Throughout Phase 2, I've been getting a lot of gear related questions from players, like which gear is the best for their class and what is the easiest way to obtain it. In this video, I will try to clarify all aspects of these dilemmas and shed light on the key factors that must be considered while making gear decisions. Before we begin, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. And as usual, special thanks to my Twitch subs and YouTube sponsors. I'm really grateful for your kind support. Metaphorically speaking, the goal of this video is not to give you a fish, but rather a fishing pole. I'll try to explain the logic behind choosing gear and the key factors that must be considered while making a decision. This way, you'll be able to analyze your own situation and make the most rational and informed choice for yourself. The first and most obvious factor is your archetype and its role on the battlefield. For example, I'm a ranger and my primary goal in combat is to deal damage. Therefore, strength is the most important stat for me, with dexterity as my secondary stat, since both increase the amount of damage I deal. Constitution and mentality are nice to have as they slightly improve survivability, but they are definitely not a priority. Intelligence and wisdom do not make rangers stronger in any way, so they are completely useless. Therefore, the first thing that you need to do is to determine which core stats should be prioritized for your archetype and build. The second factor is the availability of built tier 3 workstations on your server. The most important one is the tier 3 scribing station, as it unlocks journeyman level enchanting scrolls. Until enchanting level 20 gear becomes possible, enchanted level 10 gear will be much better in most cases. If you are not very familiar with enchanting system, consider checking out the guide on it. The link will appear in the top right corner. The third factor is your current gear. If you're someone who recently started playing, don't rush to get legendary best in slot items right away. It makes much more sense to start with temporary but decent placeholders and enchant them, for example, to +6. After that, you can begin replacing them one by one, while obviously prioritizing upgrades that are cheaper and easier to obtain. The next factor is the amount of time and effort you're willing to dedicate to your gear. It's one thing if you're a hardcore player who can spend 12 hours a day min-maxing every single stat. However, if you're a casual player who only plays 1-2 hours a day, it makes much more sense to focus on getting decent placeholders, enchanting them as high as possible, and not worrying about the best in slot items at all. Last but not least, upgrading your gear requires gold, and if we are talking about best in slot items and enchanting, then it requires a lot of gold. You need to realistically assess your resources and capabilities. Once again, it's one thing if you can safely run 10 caravans a day, but if you're a solo player, for example, it's an entirely different story. If you want a weapon that costs 100 gold while struggling to make 2 gold per hour, it might be more rational to look for a cheaper alternative instead. Now, let's move to the next part where I will show you how I chose gear for my character. I used the build planner and crafting calculator on ashescodex.com, which are incredibly useful for this purpose. First of all, go to the build planner and enter a name for your build so you can save it. For my ranger, I filtered pieces of gear that provide strength and require level 10. I also selected legendary rarity to immediately see all the stats for each item. Let's begin with accessories, as they are easier to craft and significantly cheaper in terms of enchanting costs. Bone earring is the only option, but we don't need any other since it provides exactly the stats we need. Keep in mind that earrings must be at least rare so that both strength and dexterity increase when enchanted. There are 2 possible ways to obtain them: buying from other players or gathering resources and crafting them yourself. In the second case, many players struggled because it was not entirely clear how resources of different tiers and rarities affect the final rarity of the crafted item. Now that the crafting calculator is available to everyone, you can test everything yourself. In this example, obtaining rare otter bones is quite difficult and they are expensive. However, you can use common ones and compensate by using other resources of higher rarity. Our jewel crafter figured this out early and managed to make a decent amount of gold by selling rare bone accessories. Next, we have 2 options for necklaces. Green Everlasting Necklace is cheap but decent placeholder since it provides both physical power and strength. At heroic rarity, it also grants constitution, but crafting it is extremely difficult because it requires Borg and Skinwalker bones. Kingfish's Necklace is a solid alternative that can be crafted at legendary tier. The only challenge is obtaining a Kingfish chain, which drops from a level 16 named mob in Highwayman Hills with a 40-minute respawn time. Additionally, this mob is often uncontested, making it quite a challenging task. Because of this, I'm currently using a +8 green everlasting necklace while keeping an eye on the market for an opportunity to buy the kingfish chain. I could camp them up myself, but in my case it's much more rational to focus on making gold and simply purchase it when the chance arises. Now let's take a look at rings. Patroller's ring is obviously the best option. However, the problem is that, according to the creator of Ashes Codex, it is currently impossible to obtain. This ring is supposed to drop from a named mob linked to a story arc, and as of today, story arcs have not yet been implemented. Therefore, Halcyanite rings are the only remaining option. They're not difficult to craft in either rare or legendary rarity, but the difference between them is minimal, so I crafted rare ones. Another potential alternative is Swift Screech's Bone Ring, which provides dexterity, attack speed, crit chance, and crit power. Rare versions of these rings are decent, but crafting them in heroic rarity might be quite difficult. Overall, the choice between Halcyanite and Swift Screech's rings depends on your preferences and playstyle. Now let's move on to helmets, where we again have two options. Heroic Bearhide Hood provides strength, dexterity, and mentality, while rare Growler's Helm gives strength, dexterity, and physical power. Both options are decent, but I chose Growler's Helm since it increases my damage output more. Additionally, Growler's Helm is much easier to craft as its recipe and key material drop from a level 13 named mob with a 10-minute respawn timer. All other required resources are fairly easy to obtain, whereas crafting Heroic Bearhide Hood is much more difficult. Next, we have a long list of pauldrons. Take a look at rare Ashenhaun's pauldrons. They're usually cheap, and when enchanted to +6, they can serve as a decent temporary placeholder until you craft something better. For a more solid choice, I would definitely recommend either Heroic Shadowwolf or Heroic Bearhide pauldrons. Personally, I'm using Shadowwolf since they are much easier to craft, but both options are great as they provide strength and dexterity. When it comes to cloaks, the best possible option is the Enchanted Cloak of Sunhaven, as it provides all the necessary stats. If you're a citizen of a different node, you can still take advantage of this cloak. Empty your storage to avoid losing resources, and then switch your citizenship to Sunhaven. After purchasing and enchanting your cloak, equip it and never take it off. Keep in mind that in order to enchant an item, it must be in your inventory, so make sure to enchant your cloak first before renouncing your citizenship. Additionally, keep an eye on its durability and make sure it never breaks completely. I've heard that it's still possible to repair it, but I'd rather not deal with avoidable problems. Alternatively, if you don't want to change your citizenship, you can use the uncommon River Stalker's Cloak. Since it's a level 0 cloak, it's easy to craft and cheap to enchant. You can consider crafting multiple of them and attempting to enchant one to +10, +12, or even higher. Now, let's move on to chest armor. First of all, take a look at the green Reckless Doublet, which is an affordable placeholder that provides strength and dexterity. This doublet in heroic rarity is potentially best in slot, but I'm not sure if the key material required for crafting it can actually be obtained. Therefore, my current choice is rare Bearhide Garb, which provides strength, dexterity, and constitution, making it a solid alternative. Now, let's move on to bracers. Rare Ashenhaun's bracers can be bought cheaply on the marketplace, and overall, you can enchant them to +8 and call it a day. However, if you want better secondary stats, polished tin bracers are the best option, and crafting them in heroic rarity isn't too difficult. I haven't done that myself yet, but it's definitely something that I plan to do soon. Next, let's take a look at the list of gloves. I remember using green Bloodstained Hands +6 as a placeholder since they were cheap to buy on the marketplace. Bearhide gloves are the best option if you want both strength and physical power, but crafting them in heroic rarity might be difficult. That's why I'm currently using +8 heroic waterlogged gloves. They're not only much easier to craft, but also provide 3 core stats instead of 2. When it comes to belts, things are pretty straightforward. Rare Ashenhaun's belt is cheap and provides 3 core stats, making it a decent option. However, it is still a placeholder as there is a better option, which is polished tin belt. Besides strength, constitution, and mentality, this belt also provides dexterity when crafted in heroic rarity. On top of that, it doesn't require many resources and can be crafted easily. Since this belt provides 4 core stats, it should be one of the first pieces of gear you enchant as high as possible. Next, we have leg armor. Since Arbor Edge Tassets are not in the game yet, polished tin leggings are the only available option. They provide strength and dexterity even at rare rarity. However, if you want to maximize your stats, crafting them in epic rarity is possible, and that's what I did. Now, when it comes to boots, there are several possible options. As usual, rare Ashenhaun's Greaves are a solid temporary placeholder, especially when enchanted to +6. However, I haven't haven't yet decided what is better, epic Alien chainmail boots or heroic bear hide boots. Heavy boots are much easier to craft and they provide strength and dexterity. On the other hand, heroic bear hide boots are much harder to obtain, mainly because buying heroic bear hide or silkworm cocoon is quite difficult. At the same time, wearing medium boots would allow me to get the heroic 5-piece set bonus, which increases movement speed and, more importantly, stamina regeneration speed. This could potentially improve my survivability in combat, as dodging, when done properly, is very strong. Since I participate in PvP frequently and we have scrims almost every day, this is definitely something worth considering. However, I can't reach a definitive conclusion until I test it myself. Finally, it's time to talk about weapons. For a secondary weapon, any level 20 greatsword with the highest possible physical power will work as a good placeholder. Previously, I used the Ember Blade, a heroic level 20 greatsword from Firebrand, but there is a better alternative. It's possible to craft a legendary Forsaken blade, and surprisingly, the recipe is quite simple. The difficult part was obtaining the blade fragments, which drop from a named mob that is usually highly contested. Another challenge is the cost of enchanting weapons. I aim to enchant it to +8, but unfortunately, it reset back to 0 while attempting to go from +7 to +8. Unlucky, but that's how it goes. At the moment, it is at +6, which is better than the Ember Blade that I used before, but I already spent 65 gold on enchanting and it is not finished yet. Speaking of bows, I'm still using my placeholders, which are level 20 rare steel shortbow and longbow. However, now that the Journeyman Carpentry workstation has been built, I plan to craft a legendary bronze shortbow while using the Journeyman Carpentry set and all possible quality buffs. After that, I want to do the same with the legendary Forsaken Blades longbow and to test it in combat. That was roughly my thought process when choosing gear for my ranger. You can follow the same logic and considerations for any archetype when selecting gear for your own character. If this video was helpful, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I am Flanker, and I'll see you soon.